Another forgettable loss for the San Francisco Giants. And once again, even though there's a lot of complaining about the offense, I really think the pitching is at fault here. You give up 9 runs and you're probably going to lose that game. But it's not all bad news. We had an impressive, albeit, the line score wasn't great, debut by Tristan Beck. And we also have some fun mailbag questions to get to next.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily San Francisco Giants podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Giants, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. My name is Ben Kaspick, and on the show we provide daily episodes Monday through Friday, talking about the San Francisco Giants in a way that's data-driven and rational, but also simple, passionate, and accessible to all. I'm a former contributor for the baseball statistics and analysis websites Beyond the Box Score and Rotographs. I've been podcasting about the Giants since 2015, and I'm a lifelong fan. Thank you for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get podcasts, including YouTube, so check us out there if you have not already, and please hit that subscribe button if you're watching on YouTube. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. And what is also guaranteed is that the Giants lost another game. They're 6-12. They have yet to win 2 games in a row all season. And given that they're coming off another loss, they've got to win, not just tonight, but then the next night also to finally win 2 games in a row. And so the good news is eventually that will happen. And eventually they're going to stop losing pretty much every series. They've only won 1 series so far. But right now, 6-12, it's just about as poor of a start as anybody could have expected. And so it doesn't doom them. I've said this over and over, but they started 2020 8-16, which is, the same kind of deal with losing twice as often as they won, but even through more games than they've played now. And then towards the end of the 60-game season, they were over 500. And so you can come back from this. And it would be hard for me to say that the 2023 Giants are a worse team than the 2020 Giants. And the instant reaction a lot of the time is like, but Buster Posey. Well, guess what? Buster Posey was not on the 2020 Giants. And so, yes, you had Kevin Gausman. That did make a difference. But the pitching for the Giants this year has just not gotten the job done. And a lot of it coming out of the bullpen. But also last night, Sean Manaea has just not been very good for the Giants so far. And the pitching numbers overall for the Giants, they find themselves with a 4.40 ERA, and their wins above replacement as a pitching staff, according to Fangraphs, ranks them 23rd in the major leagues. And so to be 23rd in this category in Major League Baseball, and let's just go simple ERA, they have they're right around the middle. That's the thing, is they pitch in a pitcher-friendly ballpark. And so when you're around the middle in ERA, but you play half your games in a pitcher-friendly park, you kind of get hurt by that. So the metrics kind of say you're even worse than average, even if your numbers are average when you play in a pitcher-friendly park. It's the same with offense. Like if the Rockies have an average number of runs per game, that actually means they're below average because they play in such a lively offensive environment. And so, it's not really been the starting pitchers, even though there are guys I can point to. Sean Manaea last night, Logan Webb has just not had a single start where he really put them in a great position to win. Giants, though, as a starting staff, have an ERA of just 3.60, which is not among the worst in the game. In fact, 3.60 ranks 6th best in the major leagues, but they haven't thrown a ton of innings. The starting staff has only thrown 90 innings, which is among the fewest in the game. It's 27th in terms of most innings pitched. However, the Giants have played fewer games than a lot of teams, so that does skew the numbers. But the relievers Giants, just anyone coming out of the bullpen, it's kind of hard to call them starters and relievers because a lot of this season we're seeing guys like Ross Stripling, Sean Manaea, Sean Jelly, and now Tristan Beck, who we're going to get into in just a minute, who made his major league debut last night. These are guys who are capable of being starting pitchers, but we're talking about guys who started games versus guys who came in relief. And a lot of times there's some crossover there, but the guys who've come in relief have not done a good job. The guys who've come in relief have a 5.40 earned run average on the season, which is going to rank near the bottom of the league. It's the 5th worst number in Major League Baseball. And so, to me, as I said about a week ago, the main problem right now with the San Francisco Giants is that they're not pitching well. It's like, yeah, sometimes you score 3 or 4 runs and you're like, man, they needed to score like 5 or 6. But sometimes you got to score 3 and just shut down an opponent and win a game 3-1, 3-2, 3-0, or whatever, 4-3. But right now, it's like you're allowing 5, 6, 7, 8 runs a game, and it's just hard to expect your offense to be able to come back from that. Like last night, they allowed 9 runs. It's hard to blame the offense on a night in which you allow 9 runs. You needed 10 or more to win a game, and that is asking a lot. And so that needs to change. They need to get their act together from a run prevention standpoint. And ironically, it hasn't been the defense, really. There were a few times where the defense was super costly, and it's kind of unfortunate that, the David VR mistake to throw to third base, the Brandon Crawford, 3 errors in one game, the Blake Sable route in left field on the Javier Baez ball, all of those defensive miscues, which were kind of the main ones all season long, were all extremely costly, coming in different games. The Sable one and the Crawford ones may have been the same game, but they had a 6-1 lead and the defense just let the Tigers come back, but it's cost them wins directly in the times when they have. It's like, why can't they make a defensive mistake when they're up 9-0? And it's like, it doesn't matter. Well, when they've made their mistakes this year, it has cost them. So anyway, with all of that said, I do want to turn our attention to some positives. Alex Wood is on the IL. That's not a positive. He injured his hamstring. But when one door shuts, another one opens. And the door opened for Tristan Beck, who made his major league debut, long anticipated, and was pretty good despite a line score that's not going to look so great. So we'll break down Tristan Beck's, in my opinion, impressive major league debut last night, and also get into some fun mailbag questions, including over my right shoulder here. What are the autographs on these balls? People want to know, and I'm going to tell you each and every one of them. There's a lot of fun ones that we can get into. So we will get into all of that in just a minute. But before we do, this episode is brought to you by Game Time. Buying tickets shouldn't be stressful, but if you're like me, in the past, you may have found the ticket buying experience to be just that, very stressful, where there are so many things to worry about, like not being able to find last minute tickets, not being sure you're getting the right price, getting hit with fees that you didn't know were not being included in that original price. And how about this? Not being able to see the view from the seats. Sometimes there's something going on that you want to know about in terms of like an obstruction or something that you can't see ahead of time. And all of that is solved with Game Time. And for me, the best part, images of seat views, and also the lowest price guarantee. More about the lowest price guarantee means you always get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Snag the tickets without the stress with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, here we go. We're going to transition, try to send some positive vibes. I really remember vividly, like I've been doing the Locked On Giants podcast pretty much every day. Obviously, when we say every day, it's Monday through Friday. There was the lockout that kind of shut us down for a little bit, even though we were doing podcasts, just not every day. There was some health stuff that came up, but I've done almost 1,000 episodes of Locked On Giants. And so in 2020, I vividly remember just being like, well, the Giants are 8-16, and it's a shame because there are a lot of positive signs with them. They're really hitting the ball, but they're just not pitching well. And it's unfortunate because it's a 60-game season and they've dug themselves a huge hole, and it's going to be hard to come out of. Well, guess what? They came out of that hole with a roster that was very arguably inferior to the one they have now. They're also dealing with a lot of injuries right now, and injuries that have ramifications beyond just like, oh, Jock Peterson's not in the lineup. It goes well beyond that. It has a ripple effect where all of a sudden you're not able to get favorable matchups throughout the game. Like the Mets go to a lefty late in the game or in the middle-ish part of the game, and the Giants have 3 lefties due up, and they don't pinch hit for a single one of them. And that is because they don't have the pieces to do it right now because of the guys who are injured. And so if you get all your guys back, and look, is it probably somewhat unrealistic to expect you're going to have Jock Peterson, Michael Conforto, Mitch Haniger, and Austin Slater come back and then just like never get hurt again the rest of the year and have nobody else get hurt again the rest of the year? Of course, that's probably unrealistic. So on the one hand, you can hope for that, but maybe it just never happens all year where those guys are all healthy at the same time. But on the other hand, I can dream. And if all those guys are back, it not only makes your starting lineup better, but it makes your bench better. And the Giants' ability to kind of utilize their bench to their advantage is one of their greatest strengths, if not their number one greatest strength. Thanks again for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. Everydayers will be back on Monday hearing about the Giants in this major series against the Mets. Can they at least get a split? They'd have to now win 2 out of the next 3. I would say you just gotta split this series. If you just start losing every series, you're gonna dig yourself into a pretty serious hole. The Giants play the Mets tonight at 7:15 Pacific. Catch every pitch of the Giants' hometown broadcast with SiriusXM on the SXM app. Search Giants. And the Giants, guess what? Tonight will be facing another left-handed pitcher. The good news is this guy hasn't pitched in the major league since 2021. And so hopefully some rust. He's a guy they've seen. Joey Lucchesi, he was on the Padres for a long time. So they've seen this guy. It's not... The Giants have a very unfortunate tendency at times to just be completely baffled by guys they haven't seen before. Guys who in the minor leagues have a track record of like just not even striking people out, and the Giants will go up there and make these guys look like Cy Young himself. And so I'm tired. I'm sick and tired of it. I know you're sick and tired of it. So jump on this guy. Honestly, and I said this, the numbers against lefties for the Giants this year are bad, but it doesn't make sense to me because your 2 best hitters have been right-handed hitters in J.D. Davis and Tyro Estrada. You've also got Darren Ruff, who's historically a lefty killer, and he'll almost certainly be in the lineup tonight with a chance for just serious redemption against the Mets, who traded for him. The fans treated him horribly. He gets DFA'd, and now he's back on the Giants and going to face the Mets tonight. And Wilmer Flores, you've got a bunch of guys who are right-handed against a left-handed pitcher that's favorable to the hitters, and they have track records of being dangerous against lefties. And so I just don't buy like, oh, this is just a team that just can't hit lefties. But especially if you get Haniger and or Slater back, that lineup against left-handed pitching should be one of the best in the league against left-handed pitching, in my opinion. Because all those guys I just mentioned, plus Haniger, plus Slater, and then you throw in like a Joey Bart at the bottom of the lineup, it's just kind of danger 1 through 9. And so Yeah, you've got the shortstop position. I guess I honestly, the way Crawford has looked this season, would probably start platooning him. He's just not looked good. And against a lefty, I'd probably rather see Estrada at short and David VR at second against a left-handed pitcher, with JD Davis staying an everyday guy at third, just given how well he's playing. And if some of those struggles continue, eventually I think you give a shot to Casey Schmidt to take over some spot there. Maybe you just put Schmidt in that platoon with Crawford and keep Estrada at second and then Davis at third. But then the question is, what do you do at DH? Is it David VR or is it Darren Ruff? So these are questions. They often have a way of working themselves out. But let me get to the point, which was Tristan Beck, major league debut last night, long time coming. He's almost 27 years old, so he is not necessarily like a young prospect. The Giants traded for this guy in 2019 in the Mark Melancon trade. Remember that, when they traded Melancon to the Braves, and the Braves agreed to pay the entirety of the remainder of the contract for Melancon, and they gave up some players, including Tristan Beck, who I would say was, I think, the headliner of that trade. And so Beck has just been kind of toiling away in the minor leagues ever since then, and made it to AAA, pitched, almost 100 innings in AAA in 2022, and then 13 innings here in 2023. He got added to the 40-man in the offseason. Believe he was Rule 5 eligible, and so they had to add him or else risk losing him. So once you're on the 40-man, you're in the mix to get called up, and called up he did get, if that makes sense, after Alex Wood goes on the injured list with a hamstring strain he sustained in a game against the Marlins. And Gabe Kapler on the hamstring strain, by the way, said that Wood will miss, quote, several weeks at least. And so again, this is where the Giants' depth comes into play. They've got a lot of options. We've heard that Ross Stripling is very likely to move into that rotation spot that was occupied by Alex Wood. And on Ross Stripling, courtesy of Susan Slusser of The Athletic, who is fantastic, she says, Ross Stripling says he dumped his new changeup for now. He wants to concentrate on making sure his usual arsenal is at its best, and results last night were good. He might be the top option to go in rotation if Wood hits IL. So obviously this was before the news that Wood indeed did hit the IL. And that was one of my previous notes from the previous game, was that a lot went wrong for the Giants. It wasn't against the Mets. It must have been the previous loss before they won a game coming into the Mets series. And one of the lone positives were that Ross Stripling and Taylor Rogers pitched well. And then Taylor Rogers also pitched well in that final game in Miami, where he got the last outs of the game. And so, like I have said, these guys have track records. Ross Stripling and Taylor Rogers, I'm not judging them based on like 4 to 10 innings in 2023 versus like hundreds of career innings. That's just dumb. And so I believe in the track record. Yes, you weight some of the most recent performance somewhat, but not like, it's just like DeSclafani last year. So many of you were coming at me saying he stinks, DFA him, why is he on this team, blah, blah, blah. And I said, he's got a track record, he was hurt, and where is he now? Leading the team in like every pitching category. And so just goes to show you, and it's just, that's how I feel about Stripling and Taylor Rogers. I'm just not that worried about them. And Stripling did look a lot better in his most recent appearance. And he's got a starting pitcher's pedigree. So anyway, those are kind of the updates. Just a small update before we get to those mailbag questions, including who are these autographs over my right shoulder? Just quickly, the Giants made a trade. They acquired outfielder Cal Stevenson in exchange for cash, and in a corresponding move, by the way, the A's had DFA'd Stevenson, and so instead of trying to kind of hope he got to them on waivers, the Giants made a trade. So they went out of their way to trade for a guy who was DFA'd, to kind of skip the waiver line. That means they liked him more than just their typical kind of waiver claim. And in a corresponding move, the Giants DFA'd Sam Long, who's been a part of the mix for the last couple years, but someone who, frankly, I was just never really high on as someone who was going to make a real impact for the major league team. I just didn't really like the arm action. I didn't see it with Sam Long, and so I don't know much about Cal Stevenson, but he joins the 40-man roster, and Sam Long is off. Makes sense given how much pitching depth the Giants have. Sam Long, kind of an afterthought at this point. So anyway, turning the page, coming up in just a minute, we will get to these mailbag questions. Not just who are the autographs over my right shoulder, but some other mailbag questions as well. So we'll get into all of those in just a minute. But before we do, I want to talk about my new favorite game, Ultimate Baseball GM. Have you ever dreamed of becoming a major league general manager? For me, literally, until not that long ago, it was my dream. I remember I had an interview once, and they asked me, what do you want to be? Not when you grow up. This was an interview in college. And I said, it was an interview for a position with the Giants. And I said, I want to be the GM and take Brian Sabian's job. And I was like, no disrespect to Brian Sabian, but I literally wanted to be a major league GM. It's not going to happen at this point. But the next closest thing is Pro Baseball GM. This game that is so addicting and so realistic and allows you to handle the nuances and intricacies of running a franchise, hiring the right coaches and staff, managing team finances, scouting and drafting players, managing difficult personalities, team chemistry and injuries, navigating your franchise through free agency and all the ups and downs of a season. Locked On Giants listeners get a 100% free boost to their franchise when using the promo Locked On in the game store, so make sure to check it out. To download the game, just visit probaseballgm.com, scan the code, which you can see on YouTube as well, or look it up on the app stores. That's probaseballgm.com, Ultimate Baseball GM. Start your dynasty today. All right, here we go. We are going to get to the much anticipated mailbag question. Some of you have been asking this for a long time. At least it might be the same person asking it over and over. I get a lot of mailbag questions, so I'm not entirely sure. We'll also get into a question about Marco Luciano and hopefully a few more as well. But it's Mick who says, what do you say, Mick? Mick says, who are all the autographed balls over your right shoulder? Well, I'm glad you asked. Sometimes I consider taking a picture and just sending it out, but I'm not sure everybody cares, and I'm not sure everybody watches on YouTube and is even aware that there's a bunch of autographs over my right shoulder. But without further delay, we're going to start on the top row. Top row. I just looked away from the microphone, so I got to make sure I say that into the mic. Top row and my right to left. So your left to right on the top row. And the first one, I've written these all down. It's Cody Ross. The second one is Matt Cain. The third one is Brian Wilson, and he writes "Fear the Beard" below it. And it's a World Series ball. I would imagine it's a 2010 World Series ball, and it says Brian Wilson, "Fear the Beard." The next one is Marco Scutero, and it says NLCS MVP. The one on the far side of the top row is John Miller, and he writes KNBR. That's a pretty cool one. I got that one just by seeing him before a game and saying, hey, John, can you sign my ball? I mean, how many people have an autograph from the broadcasters? Some, but it's cool. When you talk about all the other big names, I mean, getting a John Miller, he's a legend. He's a Hall of Famer himself. And so that one was pretty special to me. In the middle row, again, starting from my right to left, so your left to right, in the second row, we've got Madison Bumgarner, and it says 2007 Giants number 11 pick. So this was before he became what he became, when he was talking about just being a draft pick. The next one is Tim Lincecum, and it says Cy 08. So Lincecum after his first Cy Young, not his second, but his first. So I think that's cooler to have the Cy 08 and not Cy 08 and 09. The next one, I wrote can't remember, but that it's a 2014 World Series ball. I'm pretty sure it's again a Madison Bumgarner ball because as I look at them, it looks like it's pretty much the same as the first Madison Bumgarner ball I have. And the fact that it's a 2014 World Series ball and that I put it right in the middle, I would imagine that's what it is, a 2014 Madison Bumgarner World Series ball. And of course, 14 was the year that he played more than just hero. He put the team on his back, ride you to a championship. Speaking of Bumgarner, we just talked about him yesterday, and despite all that, why I don't think the Giants should bring him back. The next ball over is Sergio Romo, and it's a 2012 World Series ball. And of course, remember, Romo closed out the 2012 World Series. Beyond that, where did they go? Oh, yeah, so I have some skipped lines for some reason. Beyond that, we've got Orlando Cepeda, Willie McCovey, and Hank Aaron in the second to last row. And then that one straight up in the bottom is Willie Mays. So yes, I've got a pretty nice collection here. And over my other shoulder, you'll see that there's, of course, the famous Willie Mays The Catch picture. And this is also signed by Willie Mays. And I've got more autographed baseballs in other locations throughout the house. So a pretty nice collection. My family, parents, mom and dad have done an amazing job kind of hooking me up with some of these balls as Christmas and birthday gifts over the years, and I've cherished them every step of the way, and they've made their way into this great collection. So anyway, the next question, for the sake of time, quickly moving on, comes from Alex, who says, have the Giants given up on Marco Luciano, and would they give him a shot to break the majors this year? So those are like polar opposite kind of viewpoints, but I'll answer them both. Have they given up on Marco Luciano? No, not at all. The reason you're not like seeing him right now is that he's currently in extended spring training. So he's still in Scottsdale. He's still at the, Papago Park facility. What he's doing right now, the last we heard, which was actually a couple weeks ago now, so I hope for an update soon and a positive one. But the last we heard was a couple weeks ago, and that he's DHing in these extended spring games, but he's not yet playing the field, and that would be the next step. And so once he's comfortable at the plate and once he starts playing in the field, which could have already happened and we just don't have an update on it yet, then the plan would be to send him off to Double-A. And once he's in Double-A, Gabe Kapler literally said we could see Marco Luciano this season in the major leagues. And so that would be kind of everything going right. You've got boxes to check with the health and the back and the ability to get back on the field defensively. You've got going to Double-A and performing. You've got to have maybe a need at the major league level, although with September call-ups, maybe you just force the issue if he's having a big year in Double-A. Maybe he gets promoted to Triple-A towards the end of the year, a la Casey Schmidt last year. But they certainly have not given up on him. They're doing everything they can to get him back to being the premier prospect that he was considered to be not long ago. And so the answer is no to the first part and yes to the second part. I think it's not the most likely that we see him make his major league debut this year, but it is on the table. Gabe Kapler said it, and so don't just take it from me. Anyway, that is all the time we have for today. Just a reminder that the Giants play the New York Mets coming up tonight at 7:15 Pacific. It's a big game. Again, they're facing a lefty, but I see no reason why they cannot get to some of these lefties. And don't be totally shocked if perhaps you see an aggressive promotion of Austin Slater, who's a little ahead of Mitch Haniger, or Mitch Haniger himself, given the desperation of the Giants to just get out there and win some games. But even without those guys, they should be able to get to a lefty. So catch every pitch of the Giants' hometown broadcast with SiriusXM on the SXM app. Search Giants. And who's going for the Giants, by the way, in this game? It's Anthony DeSclafani, who's been their best starter by far. And so hopefully he can keep it going. I worry about eventually you can't be perfect all the time. And so hopefully it's not like today's the day he blows up. They really need to get a win. This team is in kind of dire straits right now to get some consistent victories. Once again, my name is Ben Kaspick. Everydayers, Monday on the show, we'll be recapping what I think is a big series. Can you win 3 out of 4? Can you at least split this 4-game series? And then you've got another tough 4-game series against the Cardinals. So thanks for making us your first listen every day. Once again, my name is Ben Kaspick. Check me out on Twitter at Ben Kaspick, Kaspick. If you like this show, please consider rating it or leaving a review. It helps me out a lot, so thanks in advance. And thank you to everyone who's done so already. I can't wait to be with you again on Monday. Have a great weekend. You are now Locked On Giants.